Welcome, Vols and Lady Vols, to Power Tea Talk. From the Cathedral of Neyland Stadium to the fanatical landscape of college sports, we're breaking down the plays, the players, and the pride of the Southland. I'm Daniel, your host, here with my comrade and co-host, Zack. Grab your orange and white. Let's run through the tea. It's time to give our all for Tennessee. This is Power Tea Talk. Zack, I stretched my legs out. I went for the big intro. I didn't think I was gonna. I couldn't help it. Football is close. Football is close enough that I feel comfortable doing the full intro.
Yeah, there's something about the second to third week in August where I think it finally hits you. I was thinking Sunday, woke up, was kind of reading some stuff, and I was like, oh my God, we got one more Saturday without college football. And then we have it, and I was just like, man, I am ready to go for college football, and just having that, knowing it's in your life every week for the next 5 months. And then you have Sunday, of course, with the NFL. It's one of those things where even if your team's bad, we know Tennessee, how bad they were in the 2010s, where unlike the other sports, football, baseball, hockey, basketball, it's hard to enjoy if your team's not good. Football, I think, because it's just a once a week thing, is still like sacred, right? And so having that back and knowing you've got that to look forward to is going to be so nice when that UNC TCU game kicks off.
Yeah, that one, I have no idea what to make of it. All it is right now is a marker of the season beginning. And maybe that sums up what UNC has been up to really well. It is a marker for us to be back to caring about all the other teams and kind of seeing what happens with that particular team. I am, at the end of next week, I believe I'm going to find some Friday Night Lights to go and watch. I'm going to kind of sweat while watching some high school football, just see what the local boys are up to under the lights. And so I'm very ready, and it's at the point now where it is now fair to look at a Saturday slate and start to pick out like what could be fun. I think a couple weeks ago that was like you were looking around a little too hard, like just let it come to you a little bit. But you and I were texting yesterday about like there's a couple weekends already that are building to a pattern where you can feel what the rhythm of the day is going to be like, let alone the upsets that'll inevitably happen, et cetera. And so there's already a couple on the docket that it is now fair to go and look at how fun that day might be. With that momentum comes, fall camp, good news and bad news from it, some of the preseason stuff. We are jumping into a big overview state of the program today. We will also be doing an offensive preview and a defensive preview, and then we'll do a schedule preview. And so having those big picture conversations about kind of where Heupel has this program before we jump into the nitty gritty details of the roster and the schedule and where we expect things to go, it's a nice marker for us. We did it last year, kind of an abbreviated version. I think we get to blow it out a little bit more this year and have a little bit more fun with it. It's a more critical conversation, but a lot more fun as well. The one negative camp update that we've had, and again, this always seems to happen. It's bit a couple other teams too. Farooq got hurt, and Farooq is out for the year. This is someone who, we talked about him when we talked about Noel's scheme, not necessarily the defensive roster, someone who we thought could kind of thrive in this system, find his rhythm a little bit more in this system. We finally have safeties that are not just relevant, but integral to this defensive system. And Farooq goes down in camp. Your read of, other than feeling bad for the injury happening, your read of kind of what that means and whether we can handle that at that position without diving too much into the defensive roster.
Yeah, it sucks for Farooq. He was very inconsistent last year, but he definitely flashed some playmaking ability, which for a guy going into, his third year, I believe, as a in the system. I think he was a redshirt sophomore, redshirt freshman last year. It does suck because he did flash. This is also a tough injury. It's not an ACL. It's, the patellar tendon issue in the knee has ruined some careers, right? I think depth-wise, they're fine. They recruit so much depth at that position. And it wasn't a guarantee Farooq was going to start. It seemed to be trending that way. But I would say, first off, somebody said, well, with Harmon getting hurt, they were both non-contact. Okay, so that just happens. The second part I would say to that is, with Farooq being out, the three safeties are probably going to play more. Like, I think at least I was looking at it, like they might rotate a little bit. We all know Metcalf's going to definitely play. We know Moss is going to play. And I think they were going to have Lane as kind of a floater into those situations and play for. I think Lane's going to slide in as a starter. And now it's all of a sudden Sidney Walton is like that fourth guy. I think you'll see less of depth used in those safety positions, where if they had Farooq, I think four guys were going to play. I think now it's going to be three and Walton come in sparingly, at least in big games.
Yeah, it's devastating for the player. We hope it's not devastating for the defensive scheme and the roster. I go back to this kind of framing a lot, probably too much, but this is not negative about the player, because I think you could say this for a lot of players on our roster. If Farooq was the difference between like a good season and a bad season, we got bigger problems. Mm-hmm. Like it's not right, that it's that devastating, but it is devastating for the player. And we just now hope like we get to fall camp, we get to that week one scot-free, and kind of get through fall camp at this point. We don't want the war of attrition to start, especially in the secondary, the way we felt it last year.
I know Chaz Coleman wasn't a starter to the staff because he had that weird spring summer, but before spring practice, you would have thought Chaz Coleman was going to be a starter. Between this, the Carter suspension, and Farooq, they are now going to be down three supposed starters after spring ball going into the Georgia Tech game. That's not great.
Yeah, that's a worthy opponent. And so we'll talk about it more when we talk about the defense, but it's not been perfectly clean. And we're already going to have some growing pains. And so some actual pain to go with the potential growing pains that we're going to have. The other kind of preseason-y thing that I kind of don't care about, but I think this one is worthy of discussion, especially with a State of the Program episode on the horizon. The AP poll came out. I don't think I necessarily care specifically about who's ranked where. We can talk about a couple, and we'll do some more kind of preseason-y type picks as we progress through these next few episodes. Tennessee lands at 20th. The reason it's interesting, and really the only reason it's on this podcast as part of a segment, this team has a ton of question marks. There's a massive question mark at QB. There is a lot of promise, but still a little bit of fair question marks with some of the offensive skill positions, though a lot of promise. A little bit of turnover on the offensive line and just total turnover on the defense. We're preseason 20th, and I think you could argue 23rd. I think you could argue 17th. I mean, it just depends on how much you want to fiddle with a preseason poll. That to me feels this is a hell of a thing right before we go through the state of the program. It feels a little bit like Heupel has us at a point where that feels a little bit like a floor. And I'm not saying like in a good year we'll be preseason number 3. Like there's some monsters out there in college football, but there's not really any reason for us to just be like, bam, top 20, no questions asked, other than Heupel being consistently really good in recent years and kind of earning some faith, because there's some questions lingering on this team. Is that a correct read of it, or am I just reading too much into a preseason
That's
poll?
Exactly how I would read it. That this was a respect to Heupel and what he's done in his 5 years at Tennessee, where you think about last year, that could have been a 10-2 team. Also could have been a 6-6 team.
Yes, it could have.
So I think it's just, I don't know if last year went as bad as it could have. or is that going to be the lowest it's ever been? But even still, Heupel 8-4-23 with a quarterback that they truly never believed in or trusted after the Florida game. And then last year they bring in Aguilar after spring, and the defense was a literal bottom 20 unit in all of college football. So I think it's just a Heupel respect thing. Maybe a little Jim Knowles respect too. Maybe some of the voters going like, oh my God, that defense literally cannot be worse. It's almost impossible. Even if the offense takes a step back, the defense should at least raise up enough to where 8-4 is a possibility. And I don't think they care about bowl games. Also think it's just an SEC thing.
It is a little bit.
You look at the 4 through 17 teams in the ACC, and I would probably say like 7 through 16 in the Big 12, and none of those teams intrigue me in terms of where they're looking at. So it almost falls like, okay, so you've got Georgia, you got Texas, you got Oklahoma, you got Ole Miss this year, you got Alabama. Like there's 5. You're probably going to have 7 in the top 25 anyway. So Tennessee being like the 7th best SEC team, which in a vacuum sounds disastrous, but we know how college football works now. I think it's just kind of where the voters are, and nobody really buys Missouri. So it's like, it was probably, I didn't see if Missouri got in there. I didn't fully
They're
look.
25th.
Okay. So, and I would also say Tennessee's schedule is not an impossible. It's not easy, but I think people might be I would not do this. I think a lot of national voters are going to chalk Georgia Tech as a win.
Please don't do that, people.
I would not do that. So I think people are going, oh, well, if they handle that and they go 6-3 in the SEC, they're 9-3, they're going to be top 25.
Did you see anyone that you felt was underranked from this? And again, it's a preseason poll, whatever. But was there anyone you're like, I just don't know about that, or overranked perhaps?
Did I miss Penn State bringing in a top 5 transfer portal class? Did they bring in Sam Levitt or Josh Hoover, or like, did I miss that?
It's funny, like, as much as I'm like, oh, Tennessee 20th, Heupel has set up a floor for us. The Penn State 18th makes you think, oh, Penn State 18th, they recognize that school name and they put them in the poll. Like,
is that just a schedule thing because they only play USC and Michigan?
It goes back to, and I was going to have us do a ranking as like a weekly ranking, like debated on the pod, blah, blah, blah. 2 reasons I didn't. 1, I think it would take the entire podcast every time. 2,
Yes,
I think it's hard to know, like, are you ranking the 25 best teams, or are you ranking what you think the top 25 is going to look like at the end? And I think that's where, like, it makes sense that there's a lot of SEC because you're ranking just what you think the best rosters and depth charts are. And then, well, Penn State, if they're good with that coach, is going to be pretty darn good. And so if we leave them out, we're going to look silly. And I don't know where people land on that. And
also, Michigan 16th was kind of ridiculous.
You think they should be higher?
No.
I think they might be pretty good.
I think they have a chance to be good, but I need to see Underwood play better.
Yeah, I just think that I was going to ask you this. We'll talk about this more when we talk about kind of around the NCAA before the season starts, like previewing week 1. If they have a good offensive line, they do have a couple dudes they can turn around and hand the ball to with a coach we trust. So, I don't know. I mean, that one, I wasn't sure where to place them. I think Indiana probably should be higher than 6th, but I get that the top 5 teams are just these, like,
are we sure Texas is the top 5 team? Are we sure? Would you bet money that Sark gets that team a top 8 playoff spot this year?
I think I would, and I would probably lose money.
Also, LSU 11th is interesting. I know they had a really good transfer portal, but that was a bad football team last year. And Sam Levitt, is he throwing yet?
Gosh,
I don't know. That's a legit question. I know, like, part of the reason Tennessee seemed to back off was like Levitt wasn't going to be able to throw during spring. So,
if I had to pick a team that I was like, I'm not sure why you're sitting right there, Texas Tech at 12 feels super weird right now.
Just because it's Texas Tech, or
Yeah, just like I'm not sure like what the answer is. They've had a tumultuous offseason after getting kind of just like a little bit of a wake up call in the playoff. That doesn't really ultimately matter, but they lost a lot of like high end talent and then had the weirdest offseason possible at the key position. I don't know.
It's funny. I totally forgot about Sorsby for a second. I was like,
I
who's
know.
played Morton? I was like, Sorsby. Oh no, it's not actually. So that is a really good point. Here's the dumb part of this. It technically does matter because we've seen the committee kind of be like, well, they were Texas almost literally got into the playoff last year because they were number 2 in the AP or whatever to start.
When this came out today or whatever, or at least when I saw the AP poll, you know what sucks? The very first thing I thought of was these stupid ranking shows. They're going to start at whatever week they're going to start at. Like the AP poll coming out and seeing the placement of teams only made me think about how horrible the process is. That says all you need to know about the process, but I'm still excited for the season. Getting more into the state of the program conversation that we, I think, even if it's not, I guess let's kind of state our goals a little bit, give ourselves a little bit of a prompt. This is not necessarily trying to find ways to go off the top rope about the bad things that happened a season ago or air our frustrations about turnovers in the red zone. Like, I don't necessarily see it as that. I see it as trying to make ourselves have a little bit of like a pause and disciplined look at where we sit in the college football landscape and kind of where we sit relative to a year ago and where we want to go. Because if we don't do that, then it's just way too easy to get way too high or way too low, depending on what part of the roster you look at. And you and I have texted a little bit recently of like, I'm not going to let fall camp hype do what it does to me sometimes. But I kind of want to let it do that. And so this is trying not to just give into like the ways of the wind early in the season and say like, where do we actually sit and what informs the why we're sitting where we're sitting. And so the first thing that I want to address there, and it's something that we felt we needed to see and I think was a positive in Heupel last year, the offensive universe that we now play in with Heupel is more diverse. It is more varied. It is very clever, I think, while still being, people can call it whatever they want to call it, but still being a power run game in a college setting in ways that teams have a very hard time stopping. And that is a combination that I was listening back to our state of the program last year, brief conversation, but you said, I don't know if we'll ever see the highs of 2022. It was like a lightning in a bottle for some of those. But I don't know that we won't. And again, who knows? But the fact that I was immediately paused in my brain and thought, yeah, but I don't know that we won't see that, is a credit to just how darn good the dude is at calling offense. And I think we can get into like the good and the bad of that. But what is your take on how he progressed on that last year, but things we still want to see?
It gave me more hope that we could reach 2022 again. I'm thinking of 2027 if Faison hits like we're hoping at quarterback. The offense wasn't perfect last year, but I thought some major headwinds were made because they showed way more of an adaptability that we had not seen the previous 4 years. Even going back, further under Josh Heupel in his UCF and Missouri days. The addition of the 2 tight end sets, the willingness to use a more diverse route tree, some of the running schemes that were implemented to help counter what teams had kind of figured out with Sampson, thinking Ohio State specifically, especially post-goalish. because it seems crazy that we said this before the year last year. Like, there were concerns about, like, was Golish not the mastermind? That's disrespectful to Heupel, but how much of his game planning really factored into what they were able to do the first 2 years. And there were concerns about Halsley and how stagnant the offense was in 24. They won 10 games in 24, and the overall numbers look good because Tennessee dominated their lower end opponents. But God, it was a really frustrating offense to watch. And I'm thinking Florida specifically, how infuriating that first half was. And it could have been an 8-win team. Like, it really could. The defense picked them up multiple times. I appreciate it also that they seem to be like, okay, we were not dynamic enough at wide receiver the last 2 years. Like, thank you, Brew McCoy and Squirrel White, for your contributions to Tennessee football. But that seemed to also help last year. And just a couple of stats that really surprised me about how good Tennessee's overall offense was. They were 14th in adjusted EPA per play. That is schedule based, by the way. So that's a really good, way to look at it. Success rate, they were a little bit lower than we've seen in the past. Like, they've had top 2, top 3, I think, in 22, but they were still 6 overall in success rate. That's kind of insane. Yards per play, they were 10th. This was a top 15 offense last year nationally with a quarterback they didn't know they'd have in April. 4 new offensive linemen, losing a legitimate NFL running back and a 24-year-old quarterback that had never played power football before. Really impressive when you think of that. And other than, I would say, the 2 plays,
man,
the fumble against Oklahoma and the Alabama game with the turnover there, they played well enough offensively to win every game.
They really did.
They did. Besides those 2 plays, which that is, hey, it's football, right? Every play matters, but it's kind of crazy that they were able to be as good as they were offensively. And to do that after you had to tweak your offense with a significant change, I think is really important. There's one other thing I want to mention with the offensive diversity here. The floor's been set because of how good Heupel is as an offensive coach. You look at how bad 23 was, and again, the numbers inflate because Tennessee's so good against the lower opponents. Even with that, they've had 4 different quarterbacks in 5 years. And I kind of just want to do a quick rundown. Hendon never hasn't had an NFL career and was a guy at Virginia Tech that was going to be the backup here when he got to Tennessee. Milton's accuracy issues and his inability to, like, run on read options. Nico struggled to read defenses, and then Joey's lack of just overall dynamic ability. All were significant hindrances preseason, and Tennessee was able to make it work with a strong running game and found enough workarounds in the passing game with each quarterback. So I think in terms of offense, and look, they're going to have the freshmen in, and we're going to talk next episode about how much talent is actually on the offense overall. The offense just seems to be good enough for them to win 7 to 9 games per year at minimum. And I think that's a real testament to how well this staff has built its offensive game, especially with what we've talked about, how different it looked in 25.
Yeah, I also, the one pushback I'll give on, it's not a pushback on the quality of the offense. I've said it before on here. I think he truly is just really good at this. He is good at adjusting. He's not just pretty good at it, he's getting better at certain aspects of calling his offense, which again is what we needed to see in a big way. I think back to the Georgia game last year. I don't care about the result. I care about the process. When they finally started to clamp down on some of the ways we were having success offensively, and he essentially drew up not really a double move, but a come and do this and we're going to do this type of play, that you don't see a lot of people do that to Kirby Smart. And it was a massive touchdown and a massive part of the game and one of Joey's early games. And so he has shown that he can be very clever and kind of not just out scheme, but also trick here and there his opponent. He's not afraid to move the ball down the field. He's not afraid to throw over the top. I think the two questions I have, sometimes the offensive play calling diversity just goes away a little bit. Like he gets gun shy. We've talked about this. It seems like it happens in the 2 minute every single time. For no reason. It seems like it happens there. And sometimes it seems like it just happens for a whole game where it's like we just go into like GT counter mode. And if it's working, we're going to have a great game. And if not, it's going to be weird. Because when it works really well. So like there's games like the Georgia game where he like fires back play calling wise. And then there's games where it just seems like I'm almost talking myself out of it as I make this point. Because like the other thing you mentioned is like Oklahoma after that turnover, we kind of should have been dead in the water, and he drew something up to Staley that was beautiful, and we scored.
Let me expound on, I think, what you were trying to say. So in the past, and we talked about this, their screen game was so important, those bubble screens to wideouts, that if it didn't work, it really seemed to bog it down. Last year, they went away from that and implemented other things. They kind of took that away and then did more two tight end stuff. That they now have that change up. The bubble screens still can be effective and they can still work. But I'm thinking 23 specifically, how many times they tried that bubble screen squirrel white or squirrel white blocking, which was much worse, where it's like, this is not working. Please stop. It's not working. You have to do something else. And the fact that they were able to take something that was very significant in their offense and to de-accelerate that part of it and implement other things is a really good thing to see.
Yeah, it's like sometimes some of my day job involves writing, and sometimes I'm good at that, sometimes I'm bad at that. But sometimes when I'm writing something and I want to get it to a new place, my favorite part of the paper, I will put somewhere else and say, I'm not allowed to use that right now because I need to know whether I actually like this paper or I like just that cool thing that I wrote. And if I can put that aside and then still write something coherent, then I'm like, okay, we're cooking now. If I put that aside and then I can't make it land, then it's like, oh, I just liked this one little thought I had. And so I got to table this for a little while. The fact that he was able to tie not the best hand, but a hand behind his back and implement, like, I would say more difficult passing concepts. I'm not trying to put a value judgment on the difficulty, but more difficult passing concepts is a huge, huge credit to him. The other kind of mystery we have sometimes is kind of where does the tempo go? I think those kind of go hand in hand. Occasionally, where does the diversity go? But I almost talked myself out of that a little bit. But then a little bit here and there, where does the tempo go? There are times with our offense and our skill position players that I just want to see. I just want to do the thing where we make a team stop us, as in tempo them to death and see if they can hold up to it. Because there are times where that was the best version of this offense. And perhaps that's not completely necessary. We were still a very good offense. But occasionally I find myself being like, I don't know that they could stop us if we just went lightning quick. And
I think rule changes have played a part in that. Where in 22, I'm thinking like LSU in 22, where Brian Kelly looked like he was about to pass out just from how fast they were going. The rule changes have seemed to
curtail that
a little bit. And it's a good thing that they didn't go, and I think they were still like top 20. Like this is going to be a fast offense, and they might even kick it up with a freshman quarterback this year.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a key part, but now it feels like they have gone away from, if we are not running tempo successfully, like with the screen games, that takes a significant part of our offense out. It's more like, okay, we got to find a change up. I'd like to make one more point before we move on to like the next kind of state of the program.
Yeah.
I think this is really important. And I'm going to name drop Iowa a couple times, so just bear with me in this particular podcast. This is also fun.
Yes.
I hated losing to Georgia, but like that was a freaking awesome football game to watch. And you think about the 2022 Alabama game, which is still the SEC game of the decade, in my opinion, at least regular season. It sucked losing to Georgia, but I would much rather have this than be Kirk Ferentz, Iowa, where I am winning 8 to 10 games a year. I am also doing it in unimaginable, ungodly affront to God offense, right? So I do want to say that I would rather do this than win games 13-10 and win 9 or 10 games a year.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like you're allowed to have that preference. You know, it's almost like sometimes it's like, yeah, but it's like there's no buts. It's very fun to go try to score 49 points.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's not just that Iowa here and there does that. They don't do that. And so I don't know. It's one of those where it's aesthetically lovely. When it's clicking, it is like, oh, buddy, you better buckle up. And then you just get to see really good athletes making plays. And I'm excited for more of that. And so I kind of agree with you. Moving on to the next state of the program segment, and we'll see how much these like interplay a little bit. I frame this as like transfer portal woes, not necessarily indicating that it's some massive concern or some massive failure, but kind of the state of the transfer portal and what we think that, how we think that should look, how we think we utilize it, whether that could be improved in you know, just how much a part of the game it is in modern college football. Do you feel like we have that kind of like whisper of portal woes, or is it something where you think we could use it differently, but it's not some massive flaw?
I wouldn't call it a woeful state. I think it's a state of improvement that they can work on. We can debate the infrastructure and who can be blamed, but Tennessee seems to not be able to get top end transfers. Outside Chas Coleman, LOL, to come here. I don't think it's an NIL problem because it's being reported, at least among the
Doesn't
public.
seem like an NIL problem.
Tennessee's top tier when in paying players. I believe it's more purposeful roster building. Heupel seems to be is a coach who really values and enjoys development.
He's also a stubborn SOB, and I mean that as a compliment.
And I don't even think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think this is how he wants to build a program. I would say see Braylon Staley and Mike Matthews.
Yes.
2 guys, highly ranked, that we had no clue what would happen last year. We were, I believe in our offensive preview last year, we were like, could we not have gotten a portal transfer wide receiver?
We definitely, everyone was terrified, by the way. I listened back to that as well. The pass catcher segment of last year's podcast, you would have thought we were running me and you out there.
And we had 3 800-yard receivers, and there were yards left on the board by Matthews specifically, which we'll get to next episode. I think Heupel really just enjoys that part of college football in terms of the development. And I would say this, he's never tried the NFL landscape other than that 1 year in Miami before he went to Oklahoma. He has always been a college coach. He's never flirted with being like an NFL quarterback coach or anything like that. I think he truly loves developing players, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And I do like that they made an adjustment. They went after defensive guys for depth. They didn't get, outside of Coleman, the high-end guy, but they did really build the secondary depth that they needed to get some players in. And Heupel did go after the 3 biggest portal quarterbacks this year. He went after Hoover, he went after Sorsby, and he went after Levitt. They didn't come to Tennessee, but he did go after them. I've been frustrated with the lack of a high-end running back or a stone-cold pass rusher. LOL Coleman. If he was like playing, this would maybe we don't have this discussion, but anyway. But they also got Jermon McCoy and Colton Hood.
Yeah.
Back-to-back years. And those are massive wins. So I think part of this nobody really wants to talk about. I think the transfer portal is somewhat just luck. Like I would say Indiana. they hit like 10 out of 10 transfer portals. That doesn't happen. And then there are some years where it's 0 out of 10 for some teams, right? I'm thinking Penn State last year. So I'm a little frustrated because I think there's a couple of times you're just like, if they could get one high-end player at this position, how much better would it look? But I also can't complain about the state of college football and then complain that I have a coach that really values player development.
Yeah, and I also think, the one thing that was on our wish list heading into transfer season was a running back. Like we wanted Hollywood Smothers, or we wanted one of those names. I don't know that. I think Heupel sees that as a 7% improvement on that position group at the expense of development, at the expense of Bishop, at the expense of the camaraderie of the team. Sometimes you have to make that call, but maybe Morris or Gordon does what we need him to, and you have a guy like Bishop that if Heupel was as psychotic as some fans want him to be in the portal, Deshaun Bishop would not be the starter right now because he would have told him to get out of town. And I think we're all excited about Deshaun Bishop heading into this season. And so that combined with, I don't mean to give him the benefit of the doubt on everything and in this state of the program conversation, but for an offense that, this offense I think gets criticized a lot in funny ways. But the one thing I do hear consistently from analysts, NFL guys, and film analysts at the college level is it is an offense that is so reliant on understanding the leverage of this offense that that's why it doesn't translate perfectly to the NFL, but it's also why when it clicks, and it's very hard to stop, especially with some tempo. I think maybe we won't hate the idea of the skill position players knowing those leverage points instead of plopping the prototypical talent into the system and still needing a lot of baking and maybe not being the flash right away. There's some value in giving it a go with. It's not like we're running scrubs out there. We've got really good players.
Well, and they've had wins. The offensive line last year was a win, right? They had 3 transfer players on their offensive line in Hurd, Bo, and Pendleton, and all 3 were solid, and Mo was excellent. So they've had wins more on offense, in my opinion, than the defense. It's just, I think, I will say this. You would like to see some more top 6 classes then.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a fair criticism. If you are not going to be pursuant of top high-end transfers, or you want to be a player development program, that's a perfectly reasonable answer. I would like to start seeing 5th in recruiting, 6th in recruiting,
not
more
11th.
than where we've been, which is 10, 12, 13.
Yeah. The next, I think, thing to go to, and it's funny, the segment name, I said there's a lot riding on the defensive coordinator hire. Going back to last season in our state of the program conversation, you said, and I agreed with you, so it's not me pointing fingers, the hiring of Tim Banks was a great move. I have changed that in this episode to say the hiring / firing of Tim Banks was a great move. Mm-hmm. It's really just one of those funny moments of analysis of how much can change in a year. But I think you have a good point on, you said it in December, but I think you have a good point on both of those things can be true. And it doesn't mean that we're just moving the goalposts in the favor of the program at all times.
Yeah, it was a success. I believe in the 5 years that it was a success. It's not a pass or fail in this scenario. There are grades to it. I can say Banks' tenure was a B overall in 5 years. And I think with the obstacles that side of the ball had to endure, bad development, teaching from Pruitt, limited scholarship numbers, overall 5s, that Banks did a lot with less. There was a ceiling to it. And I thought there was a floor. There was a certain floor. That floor fell out. And it took a down year for Heupel after 23 and 24 to say, hey, we're going to improve that spot. I don't think the defensive coordinator's job in Tennessee in February 2021 was attractive in any way, shape, or form. I think that was a bad job. And I think the industry would have said, pull back the curtains on some scouts, or some agents would say, hey, we were pushing our guy away from that. That was a dead end job. Now we end up getting Jim Knowles on the market. And I think Knowles and the Vanderbilt loss, and we're going to get there in a few minutes, pushed Heupel to go in a different direction. But that's a higher upside move. A guy with a national title on his resume from 2 years ago as a DC, and they were a legitimately awesome defense at Ohio State. So he needs the chess pieces, but getting a high-ranked chess master was a great get.
I think that he got rid of Banks when he needed to get rid of Banks. Like he didn't let it just draw out and draw out and draw out. I think the overall question, the overall kind of push from the fan base, despite excitement, and I know we're all going to be excited in a few weeks, and I'm excited for the year. Is there another ceiling we can get to with the program? We've had roster successes, we've had development successes, we've had recruiting successes, we've had big wins. Is there another ceiling that Heupel can get to? Is there another more consistent new level that his offense can get to? Combined with, are we always going to have that tragic loss? Are we going to fall back to a place where we have those embarrassing losses? What is your kind of read of the overall ceiling of the program? Because we're sitting at this point now where you and I both are fans of Heupel, and that leads us to a place where we are positive. Is it worth a conversation to say, is there a ceiling that we need to be seeking above that? And what does that ceiling look like?
So I'm going to tie this in with the Vanderbilt loss because I think they go hand in hand. And so I'll tie it in here. For the demon slaying win that was Alabama in 2022, that bought an exorbitant amount of good graces for me, even if the ceiling wasn't super high. And it was. Like, they went 11-2 that year. They, I think, finished top 6 overall. 12-team playoff they're in, right? If it started a little earlier. The meaning of that win, the high stakes at the time of that win, which turned out wasn't actually high stakes, but at the time, and the fact it was the SEC game of the decade, as I mentioned earlier, I was fully in on Heupel and felt that barring catastrophe, he deserved to get a significant amount of leash, even if it was 9 wins for the next 3-4 years. And while the wax is not completely burned up in that candle, it's getting closer to the bottom after the Vanderbilt game. It wasn't just they lost to Vanderbilt, who was a legitimately excellent team last year. It's the fact they got their ass kicked. They gave up over 300 yards rushing to Vanderbilt.
It was so ugly, dude.
For the first time, I truly believe in the Heupel area, I saw a lack of non-compete on the side of the ball. They quit in that fourth quarter. They were done. They did not want it anymore. And the bowl games, whatever, we were playing dudes on defense that got less than like 20 snaps the entire year. Tennessee wasn't going to jump Texas in the college football playoff or Notre Dame. But that was still an important game. And they got slaughtered. Not just beat. It was a bloodbath in the second half. The way the team lost its composure, it brought up genuine concerns about the program for the first time under Heupel, in my opinion, other than like the first year, like, where are we going with this? Mm-hmm. And I thought he had a nice first year. But he made a big boy move. Bringing in Knowles bought some graces with me, kind of bought it back because it shows he's willing to make tough decisions that were required to move forward with the program. He didn't have to fire Tim Banks. This was not Philip Fulmer having to fire Randy Sanders in 2005, in my opinion. If he brought Banks back, there would be people upset, but a massive transfer portal class probably would have, fixed or massaged some of those thoughts.
You bring Banks back, you sell everybody on, the players we had on the roster developing, getting rid of some guys. portaling your butt off. And I mean, there'd be people right now very excited, like
firing Martinez. Like,
Yeah.
there were answers there. Between the DC change and the offensive system redesign after building the Nico, I am comfortable with Heupel's ability to self-diagnose, which is vital for college football. We know he has a case as the best offensive play caller in the country. But what's more impressive is the fact he's been willing to make the necessary changes to keep the program in a good spot. A lot of coaches can't do that, and he has shown that capability. And I think maybe in a little bit like with the ceiling, I don't know if he's going to win a national title. Probably not, right? But I also think in today's college football world, that's not the only thing that matters. And he's established a pretty good floor. He's won 7 regular season games every year. If your program does that for 20 years, that's really good.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable with saying like the ceiling is, 10 wins, but there's also part of me that says, okay, he's willing to make necessary changes that a lot of coaches don't do. And I'm thinking Kirk Ferentz in Iowa, who runs that same stupid offensive system. And I know Iowa has limitations. Like, I'm not saying Kirk Ferentz should have a national title on his resume, but like that's got to be infuriating for Iowa that they run the same offense and they get the same results. At least Heupel has shown in two ways that he is willing to at least try new things.
Yeah, and I think that it is either my excitement for football and my excitement for the previews we're about to do, et cetera, or it's just we might have a chance to be a really fun roster. I don't mean the best roster in the world. I don't mean we're going to win every game, but a really fun roster in a way that is how I like to enjoy college football. And I'm allowing that to matter here. Like his system with his attitude, if he's looking right and he is like bringing the play calling and not shying away from stuff, and maybe he's a little more faith in the defense. He brings back a little more of that. Like, I'm going to go for it on 4th down. I'm going to get a little more FU mode. Special teams get back to level a little bit. If those things are cleaned up and he's being a little nasty again with opponents, and he's just got that little look on his face like, I don't think you can stop us, I will be having a great time. And I don't know that I am willing to park having a great time to split hairs on whether we are a top 8 or top 12 program or top 20. I don't know. I don't know who you would. I think there are some teams that would definitely be on that list. But I think about the teams that would definitely be, I guess, top 10 is the most round number way to think about it. How many of those teams do you think are absolutely positively satisfied with what they feel going into this year? 2, 3?
It's Indiana and Ohio State, right?
That's exactly the list I had.
Georgia hasn't won a national title in 3 years. They've suffered some. Like, they've been upset 2 straight years in the playoffs.
And then Oregon is like, I think Oregon fans are feeling a little bit weird right now. I think.
Speaking of ceilings.
Yeah, speaking of ceilings, and then Notre Dame got super weird at the end of last season. And then the other 2 that are like definitely on that list because of how they've performed recently are Miami and Texas. But I think if you had talked to those fan bases recently, they would have been like, we're not top 30. Like they have had years where they were definitely lower than what we're feeling right now. And then you got your Alabamas and your Michigans that are like, I wonder what's going to happen heading into this year. And so I just think I am absolutely enjoying that we are having the conversation, but I'll say this, like I like having the conversation right now, but second week of the season at Georgia Tech, if we're down 6, I'm going to be watching the game and thinking about whether we can get back up. I'm not going to be thinking about whether this means we're only a top 30 program now. I think that's a waste of time. But I think that is where some of our mindset goes as a fan base because it feels so important right now. Like it feels like you have to, okay, if we can win this convincingly, then we're definitely top 14. And then we're definitely top 12. And then we're definitely top 8. And if we just win a game in the playoff, we're undoubtedly top 6. I think you can torture yourself with it but like it's thinking about the results instead of the process. And I think that if we are down at Georgia Tech, which by the way, guys, we might be, I think there will be some conversations of like Heupel can't get us there. And it's like, oh, I don't care if he can get us there. I want to see if he can get us to that end zone right now. And I just think I care about that more than I care about what number I would place on his program potential. But I think that says more about me as a fan than it does our fan base's assessment of Heupel. And that two things might be true there.
So multiple points on that. The landscape's changed so much with what's successful now. And I'm thinking about when like Butch Jones was here, and it's like you need to win at least an SEC East title every 4 years. Well, we don't have SEC East titles anymore, right? I think of other coaches. Mark Richt. What does Mark Richt's career look like if he had a 12-team playoff for 15 years? Right? We might be having a completely different discussion on what Mark Richt was and is. So if we're making the playoffs, once every 3 years, and we're winning 8 to 9 games in between those years or however it breaks down, I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, the counterpoint. In terms of the ceiling, my concern has been as Heupel has become the play caller, and you can say the premier offensive play caller in college football. The last 2 years, there have been some situations with the clock. And I'm thinking Arkansas specifically in 24 that have cost them. I'm thinking Alabama in 25 cost them, right? Is there a ceiling with him? And I get NFL, like I'm not even trying to compare it because we see play callers that be good with clocks all the time. It just seems to be different in college football, probably because of all the players and different clock rules. There could be a limit in that essence of he's just never going to be able to solve a clock because he's a play caller. Andy Reid had this problem for 15 years. He's too busy thinking about, especially with how fast Tennessee goes. That I think is a legitimate concern about the ceiling part of it. And I don't know if it's going to get fixed for 5 years in. And he's been a coach for 8. He's been a head coach for 8 years, and it's still a pretty significant problem.
Yeah, this goes along with that. I think this is a pretty common refrain or back and forth among Tennessee fans and even like level-headed Tennessee fans who are trying to think critically about this stuff. The conversation of, okay, we look good in success rate, we look good in SP+, we look good in terms of the offense overall, even taking out just like crushing these smaller teams. Like we have a good offense, inarguably. If you're on the other side of that, we're not having the same conversation. But I do think, just like along with the clock, like these little nitty-gritty parts, I think there are some people that subscribe to the theory that we have a good offense. They're fine with that. But they stop there. They stop at good. Because unless we're in like kind of wide open spaces in the middle of the second quarter, not in this tight gut check game, like that's when our offense can breathe and be what Heupel wants it to be and be clever and blah, blah, blah. In these like tight spots, like the red zone against Bama last year, like sometimes when the clock is winding down, like when we need to execute instead of just overwhelm. I think there's some people that say it's not that we're bottom offense, but we're like top 40, not top 15 in those situations. I think my analytical brain pauses and says, I bet everybody is a little more tight and a little lower on the hardest moments of the game. But I think some people have that concern of like, okay, if we have this overwhelming offense, but there's identifiable situations that it does not work as well, is it going to work in the playoff? Is it going to work in this big game? Is it going to work in this, Fiesta Bowl, whatever? I don't know if I can project out enough to know if I have the same concern as some people on that. But I also think this is slightly pulling the picture back a little bit to like 10,000, 30,000 feet instead of the nitty-gritty parts. I think a couple years ago, I'm gonna put us in a dream world for a second because this wasn't gonna happen. If we had played home or neutral against Ohio State and won in the playoff, and then lost the next game, was Oregon the next game?
Yes.
They would have beaten us, let's say, and they were a very good team. I think we would still be having the same conversations about ceiling.
Yes.
I think if we had beaten that Ohio State team that was clearly very good.
If the season plays out, if the Nico thing plays out the exact same.
Yes. Like if we win and holy crap, we didn't expect that. They actually stepped up and then Oregon beats us 42-17 or whatever. And then Nico is disenchanted with the program and goes and finds a better fit. And we recover just the same since. I still think it would be the exact same question. And so, barring us play, I think it would be the same conversation if we lost in the national championship game to Indiana. Like, I just think that people who are looking for like a dead set, lock it, undoubtedly top 6 program, like, it's just not, I don't see it ever being a thing in this era of college football. I think there's one team that can confidently say they expect to be there as long as their coach is there, and another team that I think people are still in like prove it again mode, but hard to argue against Indiana right now. Other than that, I think everybody wants to be locked into those spots, and they aren't necessarily locked into those spots. And we're further back from them, but we're in the same boat.
They also, I think this is really important. They bet on the wrong horse with Nico. And we are in year 4 of the returns on Nico when you actually think about it. If you look at what they did, they got him in 2022, I think. It was summer of 2022. Okay. So they make that investment in him. In 23, they specifically, and look, maybe he didn't want to play, whatever happened. Okay.
We'll talk about it on the offensive pod because I have some thoughts on it.
But to the overall point, in 23, they're like, we're redshirting him. Milton's the quarterback. No matter what happens, he needs a year, right? 2024, they build around Nico. They have a successful season, right? 10-2, but he disappoints. They go into 2025 realizing they need to make these offensive changes to help Nico. He bails. They have to bring in Joey. And now in 2026, you're thinking Nico might be might pull a Dante Moore, right, and be your third-year starting quarterback, and now they're going to have to play a freshman. That has limited what has happened here. Because if you take 23 and 24, the defenses were good enough to national title in 23 because we weren't at the 12-team playoff yet. I'm not going to say that. 24, that defense, while not perfect, was good enough that they could at least made the semifinals, in my opinion, with better quarterback play. And he bet on a 5-star top 10 kid that everyone thought had a chance to be a stud, and he didn't. Now, you could blame him on that. Okay. He made that decision. But that has also brought down their ceiling a little bit because we're in year 4 of that investment, and it's been a total dud.
Yeah, it has. And you identified the other day that Heupel's very good at identifying his dude from a quarterback recruiting standpoint. He did it with Nico. He did it with Faison. We had a commitment today from a very promising quarterback out of North Carolina again. But the first one, who was like the highest one at the time, and we all were very excited about it, watching him play and watching him have success, some levels of success at UCLA, he just wasn't the right fit for this offense. And that's not me looking back and being like, oh, get him out of here. He just fits better in a different play style. And a part of it's progression, but how comfortable he looks when he had success last year versus the lack of comfort constantly when he was trying to run Heupel's system is a meaningful difference. And he had to find a route out of a maze that he kind of set up for himself. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that it becomes kind of analysis paralysis at a certain point because the only way to know if we can go be a top 10 program is to win a playoff game or maybe 2 convincingly. And there's a really good chance that's not happening. And I still am excited for the team.
Where would you classify? I have them 15 to 20.
Yeah,
Right
I
now.
think if I wrote it down, I think that I didn't realize this, but when I saw the AP poll, I felt like I said, I felt that was a little bit of a nod to we're ranking program expectations, not teams right now. I think that's literally what the voters kind of did, and maybe that's the point of it, a preseason poll. I don't think it actually is the point of it, but I think that's what they did with us. And roster wise, I think it would actually be fair to have us outside the top 25. Sprinkle Heupel and Trenches and the O-line and Bishop on there, and suddenly we're 20. And so I think I wouldn't go below 20, not to just echo you, but I wouldn't go above 15. I really wouldn't, because I don't think the proof is in the pudding there to go 12 or whatever.
You could make a case it's 10 to 15. They are right now, since 2021, since Heupel got there, okay, they are 15th in wins. And if you take out SMU, BYU, Boise State, and UTSA, who two of those programs are still group of five, the other two had a couple years in group of five, they're 11th. They go to 11th.
Yeah.
They've got a playoff appearance and a New Year's Six bowl appearance when it mattered in 4 years. They've got, and by the way, Tennessee hadn't made a New Year's Six bowl since 2004, and they hadn't made a BCS bowl, level bowl, since 1999 before that. They've made the first 12-team playoff. Even if they beat South Carolina in 2022, they don't win the East, by the way. Georgia still would have won the East.
God.
To me, if Tennessee's making a 12-team playoff once every 3 years, or if it expands to 16, 2 out of 4, and I'm not even going to say 20 or 24 because this is stupid. I think those are good expectations. And I'm bringing back Iowa. I mentioned him twice. I'm bringing it back.
Let's go.
If Heupel's the offensive version of Kirk Ferentz, and it post 2004 because he won 2 Big Ten titles, and he's winning 8 to 10 games a year with some playoff appearances sprinkled in, and maybe he's able to get a couple wins, maybe he gets a home playoff game, whatever, I'm actually going to be happy with that. And maybe that's just it's not an apples to apples comparison because Tennessee's had more success recently. But like, do you expect Nebraska, who was a top 10 program 20 years ago, maybe 25,
30 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. But they were historically a top 10 program up until about, I'd say, the last 15 years, people would have them in the top 10. Do you expect them to win a national title in the next 5 years? You do not.
No.
Absolutely not. I love that 89 to 98 Vols run as much as a 33-year-old can remember bits and pieces of that. But it's been messier post-Dickey, I think, than Vol fans want to admit. And because Heupel in year 2 got them to a number 1 ranking, we have lost what the post-Fulmer era actually did to our brand and prominence. It was a slasher film, what happened in the Tens.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And that doesn't get fixed in 3 years, despite what they did in the 2022 season, which, was it a flash in the pan? Maybe, maybe not. But even still, that doesn't necessarily get fixed. I don't find 8-5 a disaster season in year 5 when I've got 2 separate 10-win seasons in the back pocket, 2 out of the previous 3 years. And I don't find it unacceptable Tennessee's tied for 15th in wins since 2021, even without a playoff win or an SEC title game appearance. I just think that they're in a really good, they've been in a really good spot. I'd like to see the roller coaster not be as much 11, 9, 10, 8, but I think that's just how college football is now with the transfer portal and what the rules are. So, and he's also a fantastic representative for the university. That needs to be said.
He absolutely is, and he cares, and he also cares about the guys. I really think so. As much as, we don't know the guy, but he's not Brian Kelly. He's not doing backdoor deals.
He's not Lane Kiffin. He's not been mentioned in one coaching search. other than when Oklahoma unexpectedly opened for 2 days and then it was done. Like, that's it. And he didn't even, like, nothing came out about him trying to get a new contract or anything like that. He shut it down immediately.
I think my like thinking of 20th, one, that could change if we are really successful this year. And we'll get into that when we get into the rosters. But two, especially you saying, like, let's remove these teams not to be haters, but because they're not the big boy program that, you know, they just, it's a different category. And we're sitting around 11 or 13 in terms of those wins. 11 or 13, and there have been some imperfect years in there, some really wonky years in there, and we're sitting there. I think, if anything, I'm probably a little under, and I would love for this team to show me that. Like, I would love for them to be like, the program where it sits in the ceiling is different than what you were thinking at the start of this season. That would be, they have the talent to, and that would be awesome.
I also think that I'm willing to live with another 8-4 season if Brandon has a couple rough games. But I hear Daniel Jeremiah tweet or have a video clip saying, I've heard some of my scout friends say Faison Brandon's already getting talks about being the number 1 pick in 2029. And the defense shows improvement over the course of the year. If they go, let's say they lose to Georgia Tech, let's say they lose to Alabama, let's say they lose to Texas. If they can maybe pull off an LSU or Texas A&M, go 4-1 in the back half, take care of Vandy the last regular season game of the year, and build real momentum towards 2027 with an improving recruiting class and a Heisman candidate at quarterback, I'm willing to take what the last 2 years has provided, or what 25 and 26 would have provided to try and upgrade into another ceiling, right? Like, that's worth it to me. Instead of taking Aiden Childs and winning 9 games and doing this all over again next year. Or having Tim Banks.
Maybe it's the worst results. Yeah.
Or Tim Banks having the 57th ranked defense, right? Where it's like, oh, yay, we went 10-2 and we made a playoff and then we got smoked in the first round, but we still have Tim Banks as our defensive coordinator and Aiden Childs is a 5th round pick in the NFL. I'm willing to take that 8-4 if I see those two things.
Yeah. I think that the nitty-gritty of the schedule prediction that we're going to do right before week 1 is going to be really telling in terms of, that's when, like, the big picture becomes very specific, and we, like, the fear about what this looks like kind of comes to roost a little bit. I'll tell you one thing. I'm excited about the team. I'm excited about the roster, and I'm very excited about the offense. Surprise, surprise, with the Heupel team. We are going to talk specifically about the offense in the next episode. We're going to place the players for you listeners, kind of who's going to be where and who are we most excited about, and then talk about what that looks like big picture, what that means schematically, what that means strengths and weaknesses wise, and then where we think the offense and defense sit relative to the rest of the SEC. Thanks for hanging with us on this program overview, essentially. We'll do another one a calendar year from now. and it'll just be the way we digest the silly season of college football in a way that doesn't just let us bounce wherever fall camp has us bouncing that day. Zach, any final thoughts?
No, I think this is always good to check in. You know, my thoughts are different than what they would have been last year. And I think that's a good thing. And it's always good to just, talk it out. Like, where are we with the program? I think with football, I think basketball, like Rick Barnes is like, Rick's awesome. They have a great class. Yay, program's awesome. Like it's a much simpler, I think, than football. Football changes so much year to year. So I'm excited. Once we get into the offense and defense, I'm really going to start feeling like, okay, we're getting closer and closer. But this is always a great check-in. And it's fun to just type your thoughts out about, like, okay, hey, where are we as a program? Especially, it's a lot more fun to do this than like Jeremy Pruitt say of the programs, right?
True, God. Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you guys listening. Like I said, look for our offensive and defensive previews coming up. The offensive preview should be out later this week. So just keep an eye on that and go Vols.